Hello, happy Christmas. It's Christmas Eve. I'm Ray with another ghost story. A friend of mine told me about a friend of his. She had a strange experience and he was relating all this to me. And he kept saying, I forget. Now, what did she say? I forget what happened next. So I said, look, can I meet her? Because it was an interesting story. I said, can I meet her? I'd like to talk to her directly. So he arranged it and we ended up spending an evening together. Her name was Angela, a lovely lady, early 20s. Well, when I met her, she's about 25. I think this story happened when she was about 21. She lived with her mother. I don't know where the father was. She didn't say whether he left or passed away or what happened. I don't know where her father was. She lived with her mother in a nice house in a well-to-do area. She said that her mother had money, beautiful house. Everything was fine. She had a nice job, fairly well paid job. Only a small firm, but a fairly well paid job. I just sort of setting the scene for you a bit here. And everything was fine until one day her mother said, I've met someone else. And they went out, I've known him for a few months, they've been going out for a while, and I want him to move in. And Angela said, okay, and what could she say? It was her mother's house. This chap moved in, he seemed reasonable enough, they got on quite well. Until the day came when, it was only a few weeks after he'd moved in, her mother was out shopping, and this chap said to Angela, he said, shall we pop upstairs for some fun? And she said to me she was mortified, absolutely shocked. It was the last thing she expected from this chap. And of course she said, no way. Anyway, he tried again. The next time her mother was out somewhere, he tried it on again. Let's have some fun. Come on, let's have some fun upstairs. This went on, she said, for 2 or 3 weeks. She wanted to tell her mother, but she didn't want to cause any upset. The final straw came when this chap apparently touched her inappropriately. And as far as Angela was concerned, that was it. She told her mother. Her mother didn't believe her. Big arguments. Angela left home. All a bit of a disaster, especially as she'd been so happy at home. Everything was fine. She was pleased that her mum had met this chap, but it obviously wasn't going to work out. She found a bed sitting room. A bed sit is just basically a small room with a bed, a cooker, a sink, and that's about it. That's all you get. You share the toilet on the landing with the other occupants of the house. She stayed there for a few months. She was okay. She was getting by. Her money was quite good. More bad news came along. She was made redundant. The firm she worked for, it went into administration. Her landlord was very good. He said, look, you can stay here. Don't worry about the rent. Stay here for about a month. Won't charge you rent. She went to the social security or whatever, and she got a little bit of money from them, but she couldn't afford to pay the rent. So she was looking for somewhere else. She was wondering what to do. The day came when the landlord said to her, look, what's happening? It's been 4 or 5 weeks, I think she said. No rent. What's happening? She'd been giving him little bits and pieces towards electricity and hot water. And she left. She packed her suitcase and she left. Angela told me that she had never, obviously, expected in a million years to find herself standing on the pavement in the street with a suitcase. No work, no money, little bit of money left in the bank, I think she said. Nowhere to live, nowhere to sleep. And worse still, this was the day before Christmas Eve. And she said she just couldn't believe it. She had all her adult life done all she could for homeless people. Every Christmas day, every Christmas morning, she'd gone out with little carrier bags for people in shop doorways, anyone she could find that was sleeping rough on the streets. She'd taken a little carrier bag, and in there was Christmas cake, sausage rolls, mince pies, a drink, sandwiches. She did all this every Christmas morning. And throughout the whole year, she'd been helping homeless people. If she saw someone, she wouldn't give them money, but she'd take them food. she'd pop into a coffee shop and buy a coffee for them or whatever, sandwiches. And she said that she would never in a million years thought that she would find herself in that situation. It was just ironic. She crossed the road to the park, sat on the park bench, suitcase next to her. She said it was about 4 in the afternoon. Unlike my friend, I take notes when people tell me things. That's why he couldn't remember anything. I take notes. 4 o'clock in the afternoon, getting dark. And she's sitting on this bench. It must be horrendous. From a well-to-do area with money, a lovely house, to a bedsit, to no job, to no home, to sitting on a park bench. She said that she was just stunned. She just didn't know what to think, what to do. A girl walked past, about the same age, she said about the same age, walked past and then came back and said, "Are you all right?" And Angela said, "Well, yes." "Well, no, not really." And this girl said, "Well, what's the problem? You know, you look a bit down." She said, "Well, I've got nowhere to live. I've got nowhere to sleep tonight. I just don't know what I'm going to do." And she was crying. And this girl said, "Look, I'll find you somewhere to sleep tonight. Don't worry about that. And then tomorrow, you know, we can sort something out for you." And Angela said that she just grabbed her case and followed this girl. The girl said her name was Natalie. And as they walked, they chatted and Angela explained the situation. And they came to this small bungalow. And Natalie walked down the path and said, "Come on, Angela, come on. You can stay here tonight." She let her in. Only a small bungalow, 2 bedrooms. A small detached bungalow. She said it was rather a nice place actually. She was quite pleased looking round because she did think that she was going to perhaps be offered a sofa or something, but she was offered this bedroom. Natalie showed her in and said, "There, oh look, this is your bedroom." She said, "Look, I've got to pop out. Make yourself at home. In the kitchen there's food." She said, "There's even wine in the fridge." Right? She said, "We've got Christmas Eve tomorrow, so make yourself at home and enjoy yourself." Angela couldn't believe it. Natalie went off somewhere. Angela couldn't believe it. She put her case in her room, unpacked the few bits and pieces she had. She didn't have a great deal. And she made herself a meal. She had, as she put it, just about a whole bottle of wine, watched a bit of TV, and went to bed very early because she was mentally exhausted, as you can imagine. She was mentally exhausted, plus a bottle of wine. That was it. She didn't wait for Natalie to get back. She went to sleep. Angela was a very proud person because I said, "Well, what about friends? Couldn't you have stayed at a friend's place?" She said, "No, I didn't want to encroach on my friends, especially at Christmas." She said a lot of them were married, they had families. She didn't want to sort of muscle in on their Christmas. It would have been awful. And she said she would rather have slept in the park. When she woke the following morning, she tapped on Natalie's door, bedroom door, nothing, no answer. She thought, well, she might be still asleep. So she washed, dressed, made herself some breakfast, cleared up the kitchen properly. She made a point of telling me that. Cleared up the kitchen, sat down, cup of tea, wondered what to do. Eventually tapped on Natalie's door again, no answer, and the door was locked. She thought, oh, perhaps she'd gone out, must have gone out early. Eventually Natalie came back. She came breezing into the bungalow. Good morning, come on, we've got to go, are you ready?" And Angela saying, go where? What's happening? She said, "Get your things, pack your little suitcase, and we've got to go somewhere." So Angela just did as she was told. She was rather hoping she could have spent Christmas with Natalie at the bungalow, she said, but it seemed at that point that wasn't to be. Off they went. Walked into town, wasn't far. The bungalow, she said, was only about a quarter of a mile out of town, just on the outskirts, only a small town. Walked into town, and Natalie said, "Right, here we are, they're expecting you." She's pointing up these steps. And Angela said, "What's this?" She said, they're expecting you. It's a solicitor's office." And Angela said that she just stared at a solicitor. "Why? Well, what I want a solicitor for? Go in, they're expecting you." She went up the steps, went up to the reception desk and said, "Apparently you're expecting me. My name's Angela," told her surname. Yes, the lady said, yes. Oh, thank goodness. Come through, come through. Led her into this office where the chap sitting at his desk introduced her. And he said, oh, we've been looking for you. We've been looking for 2 or 3 months for you. And she said, why? What have I done? She was a bit worried, she said at that point. What have I done? Nothing, nothing. He said, sit down. Apparently he was quite a character. All this business, sit down. It's lovely to see you. He said, you're a hard lady to track down. He said, we've been to your mother. She didn't know where you were. We went to your work. They gave us your mother's address, so we're going round in circles. She hadn't told her boss where she worked that she was in a bedsit. She hadn't told anyone at work. As far as they knew, she lived at home with her mother. That's why the solicitor had a job tracking her down. And she said, look, what's all this about? Now you found me. What is going on? Right, he said, your long-lost aunt. And she laughed when she was telling me this, because she said to him, I haven't got an aunt. No brothers, no sisters, or my mum or dad's side. There are no aunts. Oh, he said, well, it's an elderly lady. We'll call her your long-lost aunt. And he said, she's left you her estate. And Angela immediately said, no, there's some mistake. I don't have an auntie. I don't know anyone that would leave me their estate. I don't know it. No, he said, there's no mistake. There is no mistake. You are Angela. He said, have you got papers on you, any paperwork? She said, oh, yes. Got her case out. Birth certificate, driving licence, passport. Now, she kept all these in her case. Obviously, they were documents that were valuable to her. Perfect, he said. He's looking through them. Yes, you are Angela. And she said, yes, I am, but I don't have any auntie. He said, look, forget the auntie bit. Someone has left you their estate. He said, perhaps it's someone that has seen what you've been doing. Have you helped people? Have you been helping elderly people or something? Charitable work? And she said, well, I've always helped homeless people if I can. That's it, he said, that'll be it. She knows of you. She knows of your charitable work, and she's left her estate to you. And she was still saying, no, there's been a mistake, He said, look, let's carry on. He said, the mistake aside for a minute, let's carry on. He said, this is the address of the property that you've been left. And he passed her a piece of paper. And he said, do you know where that is? She said, no, I'd never heard of that road. He said, right, let's draw you a map. He gave her some keys. He said, there's the keys to the property. And she was mumbling. She said, oh, it's a mistake. And he said, also, and he's flicking through papers, £25,000. She was thinking at that point, even if this is a mistake, I'm not going to say mistake anymore. She thought she'd stop saying that word. £25,000. He said, right, I'll need your bank details. There was a lot of paperwork, she said, that they went through. She gave him bank details. He said, I'll get the money transferred. And she's thinking, I've got a house. I've got £25,000. This is all absolutely incredible. Only hours ago, she was on a park bench with nowhere to sleep. She left the solicitor's office with the bit of paper and a map roughly drawn on it and her suitcase. She said she's wandering down the road. Which I go left here? Is that the way? Not very good at map reading. And she ended up in the road where the bungalow was. And she's then thinking, this is some coincidence. What is going on? Looked at the number, walked along. It's the bungalow. Someone had left her the bungalow and £25,000. She kept saying that, £25,000. She'd never had that much money in her bank. I don't think many people have. There's the bungalow. She walked down the path. The key fitted the door. She went in. Natalie, where are you? Natalie, she wasn't there. She said that she was again mentally exhausted. I mean, you would be. She said she just was dizzy. Her head was spinning round with 1,000 questions. Where was Natalie? Who was the old lady? What was going on? She flopped onto the sofa, dropped her case, flopped onto the sofa, and she said she just stared at the floor. She said it must have been an hour or more, just staring at the floor, waiting for Natalie to come back. Of course, she was thinking, well, if Natalie lived there, how come the old lady had left the bungalow to Angela? Who was Natalie? Why was Natalie living there? She eventually went to Natalie's bedroom, tapped on the door, no answer, went in. The door wasn't locked. She went in, looked around, single bed. This was obviously the elderly lady's room that had left her the bungalow. Old chest of drawers, nothing there. The bed wasn't made up or anything. This wasn't Natalie's bedroom. So who was Natalie? She had all the documents. The solicitor said that he'd had the title deeds to the property. He'd be looking after those for her. He'd said go back if there anything she wanted to know, any problems. She said the electricity was on. All right, the gas was on. She said everything was, there's food in the fridge. She said there's wine in the fridge. And she did say she did as it was Christmas Eve, and she, as she put it, as she had £25,000 in the bank, she had another bottle of wine, drank that. And I said to her, well, good on you. I said, I think I'd have had 2 or 3 bottles of wine. She said, what was going on? You know, the electricity, when someone passes away or you sell a place, the electricity is turned off, the gas is turned off. Everything was connected. Again, she said that night she just went to bed. She didn't know what to think. Didn't know where Natalie was. She didn't know who Natalie was. Didn't know who the old lady was. She just went to bed and went to sleep. She said for about 12 hours. The following morning, Christmas Day, and she said, you just cannot imagine what it was like to be on a park bench one minute with nothing, and to wake up a couple of days later, Christmas morning, in your own property, 25 grand in the bank, food in the fridge. She said she just couldn't believe it. She kept thinking, she told me this, she kept thinking, I'm going to wake up from this dream and I'm going to be on the park bench. But it wasn't a dream. She went into the kitchen. On the kitchen table were half a dozen or more small carrier bags. She looked in them. Christmas cake, mince pies, sausage rolls, sandwiches, a drink. She thought, this is it. Natalie has obviously been back and she's done all this. And she was just so over the moon. She said she felt like Scrooge in Christmas Carol. Have you seen that? She said she was dancing around the bungalow. She said she's dancing around the floor, singing Christmas carols and saying whoopee, yippee and all this business. She said anyone that had seen her, they would have thought she's mad. She said it was just like Scrooge on Christmas morning when he woke up and found that all the ghosts had gone. She went into town and she distributed the bags, found people in doorways, gave them the bags, and she said that she was just so grateful and just wanted to help them even more, these people. They were obviously over the moon, these poor people in the doorways. She was walking home, still feeling like Scrooge. She said she was trying not to skip along the pavement when she saw her mother coming towards her. Oh no, she thought, oh no. Started to cross the road. Angela, her mother called. Angela, she'd seen her. She didn't want to have any confrontation. She'd left. She didn't want to know her mother and this chap she was with. And her mother said, it's all right, Angela, he's gone. And she said, I'm so sorry, you know, I should have believed you, I'm so sorry. They talked for a few minutes and her mother said, look, come home. Just come home with me. And Angela said, no, Mum, you come home with me. As they walked along the street, her mother was saying, no, look, come back to the house. She said, I'd rather go with you to some flat or some bed sit somewhere. And Angela said, no, and she insisted. She said, you will come home with me. Her mother explained about this chap, how all he was after was her money. Luckily she didn't give him any money, he'd gone and that was the end of that, and she was so sorry. When they got back to the bungalow, Angela let her mother in. And her mother looked round and said, how on earth do you afford the rent for this? The rent must be horrendous. She said, I'm not renting it. And she said her mother's face was just puzzled. Well, what do you mean you're not renting it? Who's paying the rent? She said, I own it, Mum. It's my bungalow. She said she thought her mother was going to faint, so she put her on the sofa, helped her to the sofa, sat her down. And she told her the story about the old lady going to the solicitor's office, told her the whole thing. And her mother was just stunned, as Angela was initially. She was stunned. And she was saying, well, have you found out who this old lady is? She said, no. Actually, Angela did say to me that she never did find out who the old lady was. She traced her. She realised, she found out that she'd owned the bungalow. No relatives that she could find. No one knew anything about it. It was just this old lady. Even the neighbours said, oh yeah, I remember her living there. She died. That was it. So her mother said, who was this girl that you met? Where has she gone? And Angela said, I don't know. And she was about to talk a bit more about Natalie. She said, oh, hang on. She heard the letterbox. She went back. She came, oh, I've got a Christmas card. She said, this must be from Natalie. And she opened the card. And she said, oh, it is from Natalie. And then her face, she said her face just dropped. And her mother said, what's wrong? And she said, well, it's from Natalie. She said, but on the front it says, to my lovely sister. And she said, Natalie's not my sister. She said, this is getting worse. Who on earth is Natalie? Her mother said, I've never told you, but 2 years before you were born, I miscarried. We were going to call her Natalie.